Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name's Jared, and I'm about to show you some of the new features within the Visi 2023.1 release update. This will be for the CAD side of the software, so we'll open up the floor to question and answer at the end. So let's get started. Hexagon support. We offer on-site and web training. Our helpline has changed from last year, so our new phone number is 248-255-4348. Our email address is tst.support.mi@hexagon.com, or you can also access the Hexagon customer portal to email us with support questions. We offer tech days, such as this, with our webinar going over the new features, and as you probably already know, we have an unmatched level of support and services. So what is the Hexagon customer portal? This is an easy way of accessing your software licenses. This allows you to access software licenses for the entire company. It's also an easy way of being able to submit support cases, track your cases, see the status of the cases. And it's also your way of accessing the latest version of the software. So any patch updates, any new releases will be available through the software tab here. So it's never been easier to access us via remote support. So with Hexagon, we have introduced a new application called TeamViewer. So the TeamViewer Quick Support app is automatically installed with your Visi software. There's two ways of accessing it. Right through the software, through the question mark dropdown, same area you access query, via remote support, and also through the Visi launcher. So once you have the support for TeamViewer app up, all you have to do is just give us your ID and password, and we would be logged into your system to help you out with any help desk needs. Within our technical support services, as mentioned before, we offer many different services, such as installation and training on new softwares, transferring all your tool libraries, your tool settings, and any custom components. Within the 2023 update, we can come on site, we can do this over the web, and we can help you get up and running on the latest software. So from here, we're going to go into our agenda of what we're going to be covering in this webinar. So we're going to be covering the installation and computer recommendations, translators, user interface improvements, drafting and modeling, surfacing, analysis, plot view and dimensions, standard elements, mold and flow, progress, and Visi reverse. So we're going to go into the installation and prerequisites. So within the installation, it still requires Windows 10 or Windows 11 Pro to be installed, and also is only supported with the 64-bit version. So talk about previous compatibility. Visi 2022.1 files can be opened in 2023. However, once saved in 2023, it is not backwards compatible. So as you can see, the icons and splash screen have changed between 2022.1 and 2023. So we're going to talk about some of the new updates to the translators in 2023.1. So highlighted here are the new import translators. These are the ones highlighted in green. Then here are some of our new export translators. So we're going to talk about these more in detail here. So probably one of the biggest translator updates is the ability to support more 2D formats. So some of the formats that are now supported in 2023.1 are your CATIA drawing files, your Creo drawing files, NX drawing files, Solid Edge drawing files, and probably the biggest one is SolidWorks drawing files. So you have the ability to bring in these 2D files with the alternative library. And basically, here's how you would switch that alternative library. So this is a really big enhancement requested by many for years, and now it's in the software. So there's also another translator supported update for the .obj format. So this is basically like a format for supporting any kind of mesh type of data for UV positions, for vertex normals, vertex faces, and so on. And then also the JPEG.jpeg extension is now supported within the merge options. So now we're going to go into some of the new user interface updates. So the menu options have changed a little bit in 2023.1. So basically here's just some of the drop downs. So the main big ones that I've noticed that have changed are The operation blends have now been moved to modeling blends, and the cut bodies have been moved to operations. So there's just been some cleanup work with some of the command drop downs. So as you can see, here's just a drop down of some of those changes. A lot of the icons have been fully updated in this version as well. So there is a new big enhancement to the 2023.1, and there's standard and extended modes. In the standard default mode, a simplified list of commands have been shown. So the most common commands that are used are within the standard menu. The option is intended to clean up the interface and make it easier for newer users to learn the software. So this is very, very important to users that have used the software for a while. There is, in the system settings area, a drop-down called Extended User Mode. You will want to have this checked with one Visi session open to be able to bring back the full menu options. So if there's commands that you're used to seeing and you notice that they're missing, this is very important to check on. Again, very, very important. So we'll talk about some of the command toolbars. So command toolbars can be defined as floating, docked, or hidden. In the floating mode, the contextual menu fillet toolbar is automatically resized as well. So you can see here's your floating toolbars. So you have the ability to actually make these toolbars transparent or not through the system settings user interface options. And you have the ability to show, hide, reset the toolbars as you choose to as well, and bring it back to like how the older versions worked. But this floating toolbar box allows you to use more of the interface as well. So here's just a drop down to say show, hide, and this would bring back your styles the way you used to see them. So within the toolbar list, there are now two submenus. So if you right click on the icon bar list, you can see two submenus. So there's A through P and Q through W. This basically prevents that drop down from being a full large list. So here's just a video example going over some of these. So you can see how the menu options have changed. You can see how it kind of reduces the size of the drop downs, making a nice cleaner look. So if we go to the system settings area, you can see how there's an extended user mode right now. If you check that box, this will actually bring up the drop downs much like how you used to see them before. So you can see how it's got a much longer list of commands. Some of the commands may look like they're missing, but you just have to check that extended user mode. So here's your show icon bars. You can turn this on and off. You can say show hidden icon bars and actually bring up the normal menu. Or you can say hide icon bars and say show command icons. And this brings up those icon bars as floating dialog boxes. They can be moved around, put on a second screen if you choose to, and there's basically two icon bars. You can see one that's the primary icon bar that you're used to seeing, and the second one's the command icon bar. You can see how there's a floating dialog transparency box that you can slide on and off. So here's where the floating dialog boxes show A through P, Q through W, and it reduces that large list that's shown. Hood flyout commands. So you can actually apply multiple commands to one individual hood flyout. This is available within the system settings graphic icon area layouts. And as you can see, you can actually add multiple commands to different commands. For example, the shaded command, the analysis commands, and so on. There's a new toggle switch button called display face color. This will allow you to toggle on face colors and toggle them off as well. And there's a new toggle switch button for the region creation. You can toggle this on and off to be able to view closed areas on the workplane. The Visi units of measurement are actually going to be saved with your default measurements, not the last file used. And within docking dialog management, there's actually a new icon to be able to force a floating dialog box or not. So this icon looks just like this right here, and this is basically a new command to be able to dock and undock your area without having to do a right click. So there's also some new options within collapsible frames within any graphics icon command. So you can actually expand and collapse different frames as needed for commands you use over and over versus not to make the dialog box smaller. Within graphic mode, you can now retain your shading hidden lines inside of your file. So, for example, when you save and close it, you can reload it. It is not necessary to have these defined inside of a preview file as well. And in some cases, the shading is loaded without that preview file. So, there's a new option within System Settings called Retain Graphic Modes on File Load. Then right-click to confirm. You now have the ability to actually right-click and confirm within the dialog box that you're actually applying a command to. You don't have to have your cursor in the graphic area anymore. Within Visi fonts, you now have the ability to display the default Visi font from the status bar menu and toolbars. There is a new option to use fixed spacing, and these options are actually under the System Options User Interface area. Within tooltips, if you hover over an area of your message area, and let's say that area isn't big enough to show all the font, if you hover over it, you get this little message area that shows you the full explanation of what it's looking for. Speaking of the message area, it is now possible to display the message area right on your interface area. So as you can see, there's the message area that displays right in front of you. This makes it easier for you to be able to see exactly what the command is looking for, and it's right in the foreground. Within your context menu, it is possible to drag or, with a right click, pre-select, move your contextual icon bars. Basically, you can also pick an empty part of the toolbar to move it, as well as a blue ribbon bar as well. And within the command search, it's become more visible. As you can see, there's a highlight on the command search bar, so if you don't know where a command is at, you can always search for it. So here's just a quick video showing you some of these different explanations. So here is your multiple icons in the graphic area. You can see how you can actually set multiple different icons for these subgroups. These are all customizable, so you can see how I have a headline area as well. I can change my views to whatever I want them to be, and you can see how the isometrics all have different alignments. We also have display face colors, so you actually have a toggle switch now within the icon area that you can quickly toggle face colors on and off if you choose to. And within Cuboid, you can see how here's your tooltip area. You can highlight over the area and see the message area, and then you can also see that message area at the very top, the help panel. So these areas can be turned off. That message area can be turned off by going into System Settings, and you just basically check or uncheck Show Command Message Panel. You do not want it in the foreground. We're going to now go into Pick and Selection. It is possible to now do a pick and selection on an intersection point in the middle of two faces. You can see how the intersection point between the two faces actually will now display an edge, which makes it selectable for any commands that involve a point environment. Within your selection set, it is now possible to rename your selection. So in the previous version, they introduced a selection set, so you have a group of faces you want to constantly select over and over and over again without actually having to reselect all of the faces. And inside of Enhanced Pick, you now have the ability to do an Enhanced Pick and type in some incremental values on a face. And you can actually turn on and off that incremental value area by using the L key. Within Pick Point, it is now possible to press the Enter key if you want to automatically have that point display on the current work plane, and the O key if you want it to display on the absolute. And within Facet Mesh Shading, all commands are available within this shading option, so no longer will they be grayed out. You now have the ability to dynamically create a work plane just by simply highlighting the work plane on the bottom left corner and just doing a simple drag of it. This will bring up the automatic work plane orientation, where it'll allow you to create a work plane right from the existing work plane. You have the ability to rotate or do whatever you need to do with the work plane. Here's just a quick video. So I have a solid block and a couple of surfaces that are intersecting each other. You can see how where these blocks are intersecting, it allows me to actually use a point environment command to actually pick that intersection area. So as you can see, it is allowing me to select it. This can also work great for anything else. So if I go to sketch line right now, I'm actually highlighted over a face. I could type in a value from that face. Previously, I had to move my cursor off of the face to be able to type in the value I wanted. Now I don't have to. And here's our dynamic work plane. Basically, I'm just simply holding my left mouse over that work plane to be able to create a work plane. It gives me the automatic work plane orientation where I can save it and instantly save a work plane right from that dialog. There have been several enhancements to the translation command. In incremental translation, when you select a part, the slider is placed on the closest relevant point for your selecting the part. For example, the vertex, middle point, or edge, the middle point of a face, the center of a circle arc, and so on. This is particularly useful for applications like, for example, with a roto translation of a part where you will avoid having to use the slider axis to be able to do this. This also is relevant to using the Alt key. The inserted value for the slider of the increment is positioned closest to the slider. After any change, the slider will reset to 0 in order to consider the next inserted value. The closest slider axis is aligned to the selected direction, and here's just a couple pictures and a quick video showing this. So if I go to Edit Translation, I pick as close to the bottom left corner, and you can see how my slider shows up on that bottom left corner. But now I'll pick on the top right corner, and you can see how it's showing on the right side. And if I pick in the center, you can see how that incremental translation actually picks there. So now we'll go off of something with an angle as an example. So like if I go ahead and pick on this edge, you could say select direction. And if I pick the edge itself, it automatically changes the increment value in relevance to that edge. So if I do a translation, it's actually doing the translation in relevance to that direction. There's been some new enhancements to the rotation command. The commonly used rotation angles have been actually placed into a drop-down dialog. These are applied to the rotation, the pattern, rotation, and pattern radial. So as you can see, there's an angle list, and the most common angles that you put in there, you can just choose it from a drop-down rather than have to type the angle in if you choose to. Within Color Palette, it is now possible to restore the original color palettes on a save and load of a custom color palette. This is useful for when you're working on customer data that is specifically based on a certain color scheme. And in orthogonal view, you have the ability to do point snapping along an extension line to mark the appropriate Z direction, and the marking of the origin point is also swapped to XZ plane, and it's possible to snap along the Z direction. This is the same for the YZ plane. In previous versions, you always had to snap to the X or the Y, regardless of the plane itself. Within Change Attributes, it is now possible to assign a reference name to any entities. This name is displayed in Query, and then also later on, if you're doing any kind of machining, it's also displayed there as well. There is now a new Reset Face Transparency option when working on solids. This works like the Reset Color and Reset Face colors as well. And there's a new enhancement to be able to display a workplane name. In System Settings Graphics, there's a new callout called Show Workplane Name. In the graphical area, it will display the workplane. It is now also possible to define workplanes by a color. So you could actually select a relative workplane and change the color of that workplane as well. So here's just a quick example of the reference names. So if I select this option or this dialog right here, and you can see there's a reference name, I could type in a name to whatever I want. So main strip, for example, and then I could do a secondary strip. So if I go ahead and confirm that, and I go to Query, as an example, I can select that area, and you can see how the reference name now displays within the query area. Going off of the Create Workplane, you can display a workplane name. So I'm just going to create a workplane real quick in this corner here. So whatever the workplane name is that I want, I'll just leave it as WPL, and under System Settings, under the Graphics area, you can actually show the workplane name just by simply doing a checkbox. So you can see how that workplane name is now displayed there. And basically that workplane name is now going to be on file. You can also change the workplane reference color too, which is also big to separate out your workplanes. So if you change the workplane reference color, you can select it, you can go and hit confirm, and now that workplane is actually a different color. So you can separate all of your relative workplanes based on specific colors. So I'll go into drafting and modeling. So within the Blend with Curves command, there's a new trim option which allows you to trim at the nearest edge that you selected. So there's a slider that is available to manage the tangent scale as well. Within offset elements, it is now possible to be able to create and select an edge to avoid extracting any wireframe. You have touching elements, not concatenated, which are offset on the same side. And you also have an option to use create profile on offset. And you have another option called close boundary, which allows you to create a closed boundary. This option also allows you to create that closed boundary as an arc or a segment. So let's start with the blend with curve command. You can see how you can select your curve. We're selecting approximate areas, and we have this checkbox called trim. If you check and uncheck that box, it'll either retain the extra lines as they extend, or even better, if I go to select those extra lines and I select trim, it actually gets rid of them. So if I'm picking an approximation point between two lines, I can actually trim them along that curve. So now we'll go into the offset elements option. If you go ahead and select these areas, you can see how we have both sides. You can see how we have the option close boundary just below both sides, and that's basically this option right here. So when we have that option, either on both sides or close boundary, we can create that into a closed profile. So if we have closed boundaries, we can select closed profile, and that'll create it into a closed profile. We can also do it by segments or by arcs. This creates a slot shape around those areas. So within closed profile, the icon manual selection is available right at the start of the command. In this way, it is possible to do a manual selection before even having to select a first element. There's been some improvements with the vector text within this version as well. So when you are actually inserting in text, you now can preview the text as you're doing an insertion. Previously, you just pick a point and then you'd see your text. Now you see the preview of it, which is very, very nice. The command dialog has been updated with collapsible frames as well, and the command dialog is either docked or floating, depending on your modeling commands in docked area. Within matrix point sets, there's been a few new options added as well, such as application points, distance mode, and grouping of options for base and vertical and specific frames. Within pattern translate, it is now possible to do a translation of an open pocket within your dialog. And within pattern mirror, you have the create feature options or create feature instances within the options dialog too. So within chamfer, it is now possible to define the limit options. So just like with blend, you now can set limits within the chamfer command as well. And offset hollow bodies, it is now possible to offset faces. And then when you're offsetting faces, adding a blend edge to an extension face of a convex edge. Within extrude elements, the retain original elements option is on and is used by the extrude operations. So here's just a quick video just showing the chamfer command here. So if I select an edge, I can change the distance and I can set a limit to it. So I can set a limit by points, by entities, or by planes, much like how the blend command functioned in the previous version as well. So you can see how I can drag this chamfer around to wherever I want it to go. Under the offset hollow bodies, I now can pick faces. So as you can see, I'm selecting these faces here. So I can set the offset for those specific faces, creating a surface. I can choose whether these convex edges have a blended edge or not, just by simply checking and unchecking that blend edges area. So within solid forms, in cuboid and cylinder, you can now apply a non-uniform offset when you're creating the cavities, much like how you would do with bounding box. You can add negative values to the offset and highlight the offset within purple areas within the graphic pane. Within Edit Constant Radius Blend, there's been several different enhancements as well. So there is new functionality to be able to delete the blend and throw a cap on top of the blend. Within this cap area, there's enable modes such as planar cap, generic cap, cup inside of edges. These options are useful when it comes to fixing a complex chain of blends within an area. And in the video that we're about to show you shortly, you will see those options shown. So let's start off with the solid form area real quick. You've got a cuboid. We're going to go ahead and just pick an area for that cuboid to be created, just adding a miscellaneous length and width. And then we'll add a miscellaneous height that actually goes into the part. So if I use the collapsible window and change my application point, I can select that area and I can create with subtraction. So I do still have the generic cavity or create cavity option, which allows me to put a generic offset. That's an offset overall for the entire piece. So I'm just changing the size of this a little bit more. And then I can show transparency mode. I'll apply an offset value to this. So you can see how that offset generically goes in all directions. But now we've introduced a new non-default offset. So you can see how we can do the offset just in the length, just in the width, and maintain that height as what it is. You can do a unique positive length, positive width, and it will apply those values as well. So as you can see, it's applying that default offset for that generic block. So if I apply it, the cuboid is created and those other areas are in there as well. So the same thing is true within cylinder. I can go ahead and select cylinder, create my radius, create my height to whatever size I need it to be. Under Boolean operations, I can create subtraction, add a generic offset, or you can see how there's a non-uniform offset. Now obviously the difference between a cylinder versus a cuboid is you got length and height rather than length, width, and height. So you can apply a unique length, a unique height, instead of doing everything at one time, and also add a positive, negative height as well. So you can see how the difference is between each one of those areas. You can see the radius and the actual offsets off of that radius. So go and apply that. And now we'll show our complex blend that we're trying to heal off. So if I go to the Edit Constant Radius Blend area, I can use block control, and I can pick all these different faces. And you can see how right now it does fail to create. Even if we do propagate over adjacent blends or selecting delete blends, it does fail. But when we select delete blends, I select the cap option. You can select the many different options within the mode area once the cap option is enabled. We have our different drop downs. You can select a generic cap, and you can see the different results between these capped areas. You can also select a cap inside of edges. So you can see how that actually starts to work on the delete and healing of it. It heals some of this, but now with the delete extract faces, we can delete the rest of it. So I'll go ahead and confirm this. We'll select delete extract faces. And basically just pick all of the edges. So when I say pick all the edges, you also want to include that triangular shaped edge where the actual blend stops. So that's why you see those little windows. You can see how we drag window on all sides, and basically here's that little triangular shape that the edge leaves behind. Basically once we have this selected, we select delete and heal. You can see how it actually heals off that area much easier. So from here, we'll clean this up a little bit further, and you can see how it cleans up that area too. Blend between faces. The blend is created from the default side the face has been picked from. So there's also a quick little toggle option to reverse both the first face and the second face within the interface. So no longer do you have to go to the Advanced tab to check and uncheck those boxes. So there is a red arrow that is intended on being the normal face, which has been restored to a point. Within male thread, there has been some new attributes added to this as well for the faces used for the male threads. So the attribute is applied to query, surface analyzer, annotation, and commands within plot view. We're now going to go into what's new with surfacing with Visi 2023.1. So we'll start with pipe surfacing. You now have the ability to create sections when the surface is failing to be able to be created. There's a circular cross that is now able to be applied when it comes to perpendiculars to the pipe surface. So this can be used to create surfaces using commands like auto constrain or lofted surface. This also could be something that could be created on a failure. It is now possible to select wireframe that belongs to a solid group to make a pipe surface. And there's a new function called concatenate to properly manage the pipe surface, joining points and elements together when it's not concatenated. So here's just a quick video example showing the pipe surface from a solid group. So you can see how I have a solid group that's associated here. If I select pipe surface, I can make this wireframe that's related to that solid group and actually make a pipe surface within that area. So I can create that pipe surface into a solid and actually have it be semi-associated to the area. So now, on elements that are not touching, You can see how I've got a profile, I've got some wireframe here. You can select this element and it still creates a pipe surface even though it's not touching. You can select multiple faces and you can say concatenate elements. Concatenate elements is unchecked, it will actually make separate bodies out of it. If they are checked, it'll make one body out of it. So multiple faces, concatenate elements, you can select these to concatenate and change up the way the pipe surface works. With a thick surface, there have been some new options added for managing the thickness distance. You have the ability to, say, apply on both sides, as well as reverse side. So with the thickness management and other commands, such as auto constrain, one drive by two shapes, pipe surface, there have been some added options as well, such as reverse side, apply distance on both sides, and back values. Within auto constrain, it is now possible to select a non-trimmed curve or edge to be able to build a surface off of. There are a few new options within auto constrain. One of them is trim elements at intersection point. This option temporarily trims in a selected element on the nearest point. You also have retain original elements. When this box is checked, it will actually retain the original elements. If this is unchecked, the original elements will disappear. Within extend surface, it is now possible to do the extension by a shortened surface by edges. And within fillet surface, it is now possible to work on a solid. And you can also select side edge constraints to determine the shape of the sides of a created surface. Another new option is to keep trimming curves, which has been improved upon, and it allows you to create the trimming curves or retain the trimming curves on either side in case of failures. So here's just a quick video example showing the auto constrain command. So inside of here, we select auto constrain. Right now I've got this curve right here, and I'm going to also pick these edge constraints. What would normally happen is when you create the surface, it would fail on the creation, or it would try to create a surface that's too far. With this trim elements at intersection point, this allows us to actually automatically trim this in relevance to the edges that were previously selected. So we can also unite this surface to the other surfaces as well. Continuing on with this, I've got some extra wireframe geometry in here, so I could just select this wireframe line, select these wireframe lines as well. I can pick that edge and this edge, then I can build a surface off of that. And an additional thing I can do is I could say, here's the trimming elements again. I could also turn off the retain original elements and delete those edges. So let's talk about the fillet surface. So I can now pick edges of an existing model rather than having to have wireframe in there. And you can see how it creates that model from that. So I can turn on and off the side constraints. Basically what that does is that's going to allow me to do some trimming that trims naturally to the edge. You could change the tangency scales as well by doing the drag with these bubbles that are on the screen. And if I go ahead and confirm, it'll confirm. So here's the same exact model on a solid. So again, we're going to select edges, but this time do the tangency. So we'll select the tangency of these edges. We'll pick the edge that we want to retain. Select the same thing on the opposite side. And when I hit preview, you can see how it actually builds that overall surface. So this makes a nice clean surface in between those areas, making it much easier to work with. So again, we can keep the side edge constraints, and that just kind of changes the way the model looks as well. Adjusting the tangency scales as well, and that's going to give us what we're looking for there. So kind of continuing on here, we can go ahead and select, like, let's say this edge and this edge, and this is with surface tangent. You can actually select the side edge constraints. It actually draws wireframe there that could be used for a future surfacing command. Again, changing the constraint areas with that surface tangent area. And we can keep the trimming curve to be able to reuse on a different command. So now we're going to go into the analysis dropdown. What's new in 2023? So there's actually been some big changes to this dropdown. We'll start out with the split line command. So the entire user interface has been completely revamped within this command. It's much easier to use, and it's a much smoother process to be able to change and edit and apply a split line. The same thing is true with the split plane command. You have several different enhancement options within this, such as being able to select edges. Previous versions, you were only able to pick wireframe. You have an automatic solution calculator, and you have some options to extend the method for the automatic solution, extrude values for the part within a bounding box, and you have the ability to modify the chain after this selection has been done. There's a new slider option as well to be able to pick a chain of edges for the automatic solution as well. So we're going to be playing a video just kind of show you some of these options here. So we'll start off with split line. So if we go to the analysis dropdown and we select split line, you can see how we have this part here. And within split line, we select our part, choose a direction just like we normally did. And basically from here, we have similar options to what split line offered before. Automatically does our color coding. It'll do isocline curves, imprint shadows, search silhouette, and so on. So you can see there's several different options. You can split the body and see what the body looks like from here as well. And just like with the previous split line command, you can modify a few things. So when we do the display, we can display the first body, display the second body, other, which is the split line, and all of the above. So you can actually go into here and you can start modifying and manipulating this split line area. So you can see some of these circular shapes. We may want to manipulate that, and sometimes the search may not give us the best possible solution. So we can add points. So basically I'm going to select the 2 points right here. Basically that creates a line, and that line could automatically be, let's say, an imprinted point. So we're going to select a different set right here. So we're going to select this line. So basically it's like us using sketch line and imprint all within this split line command, which is huge. It saves you a lot of steps. So as you can see how it automatically does that splitting of the lines. You can remove the redundant values, so that creates a third line, or remove redundant edges. And basically from here, that shows up in other. So you got your first color, second color, and other. So if I say remove redundant edges, you can see how that simplifies those sides out, which makes a cleaner split line. So here's another example right here. You can see how there's a line right there. We can say add and remove redundant lines. So we can pick that line, and actually it's going to allow us to put another color in there and remove that redundant line. So we have a few additional areas within this as well. Like I said, isolating the bodies. And then you could actually go into saving the split line. So we select save the split line, that's just going to save the split line. So it looks good in most areas, but some of the areas might need a little bit of cleanup work. You can actually go back into the split line, and you can edit the existing split line by just simply selecting it. And this goes back into allowing you to manipulate. So you see how this area is not so ideal? We can pick the actual curve that we want. We can actually manipulate and draw a curve that we want, and we can remove the redundant curve in there. So this would actually apply the new split line and edit that split line in regards to the entire area. So it splits the body. It is a lot easier and a lot more user-friendly versus the older style of doing it. And so now we're going to go into split plane, which is also a lot easier, a lot more user-friendly when it comes to your selection. So we're picking edges. This is a brand new function to the split plane option to be able to create your relief and shut off surfaces for a mold. So you can see how it color codes everything. It automatically separates bodies out, and it basically separates out our planes, letting you know which plane is to which direction. So we can actually add slider movements. This adds additional planes to what the system automatically recognized. So I can select, like, let's say from this point to this point, and that could be considered a separate plane. And we can select all of those additional points. You can see how the face colors color code to the relevant plane changes that we've been making. So we can also choose to take out that surface and possibly remake that surface maybe in a different direction or something along those lines. So if I go in here, I can pick a different direction. So I simply selecting an icon. You can see how it automatically shifts that direction in relevance. So we highlight, let's say, another one of those little circle or one of those slider planes. You can adjust where the slider plane is actually at. It changes the color code, and we can also pick a different direction for that new section line. So you can see how it selects a different section line direction, and it basically improves and cleans up the way that this split plane is actually referencing material. So we can actually go into here. You can see how that split plane actually goes into the part. We're changing the direction around as well, and it creates a clean opening. So Now, let's say where that is actually going into the part, we can add an additional slider. Pick between 2 points. And then go ahead and rebuild it. And from that point, let's say that's an area that we don't necessarily want, we can turn off the connect automatically, and that's going to actually go in and allow us to remove that area. So it's not actually completely closing this off as a relief and shut off surface, or if we select connect automatically after we turn off that surface creation, it turns that off and we can focus on a different area. So we can add to that, and we can focus on these areas with a different command, like let's say a surfacing type of command, an extrusion type of command. But this makes it so it's a lot easier to create your relief and shut off surfaces very quickly, just by adjusting some of these slider bars, changing the direction of the way the sliders are actually going to be referenced, and changing up the direction for where it's actually going to be trimmed from. So now we'll get into split and split by color. So the two commands have been redeveloped to have the same workflow from one to the other. The icons have been aligned in both commands as well, so you can kind of see how the icons are very similar between the two. Within Draft Analysis, the interface has also been updated as well. So there's new functionality to this, so you have some new commands such as Tooltip Info, Create Labels, and you can also show vertical faces. You can also only display the vertical colors if you wanted to as well. So here's just a quick video. We're going to start off with the draft analysis. So we'll start off with draft analysis, choosing the direction, just like how we always did. And you can see how there's a fast preview showing the color ranges. You have a number of ranges. You can increase and decrease them. You can see the color bar on the left shows up instead of right in the dialog. You can display tooltip info. So if you basically select a face, you can see the tooltip info on that face, telling you what the draft angle is. And then when you actually confirm the command, you have the ability to create the label. So the label will display after the fact as well. So you can see how when we select these faces, it displays all the labels for the relevant faces. You can also draw curves, imprint curves, and show the colors as well, just like how the other draft command worked as well. So you can change the color of vertical faces if you choose to. You have your vertical faces show up as a different color as well, so all your vertical walls are considered as that color face. So again, if we select draw curves, it generates a preview of what the curves are going to look like. If I say imprint and color, it actually, when we hit the checkbox to confirm, would actually imprint and color these draft shaded areas. So you can also apply the vertical face color only. So if I check that box and hit preview, it only displays anything that is a vertical wall inside of this dialog. The curvature analysis command has also been redeveloped with a cleaner interface. You can also, like with the previous command, display tooltip info and create labels. You can also choose to have a concave or convex face option as well. And there's a brand new command within 2023.1 within analysis called altitude analysis. This command allows you to calculate the altitude of a part. It is possible to draw, imprint, and color the altitude ranges. You can also show and create labels within this command as well. So here's just a quick video of these two. We'll start with the curvature analysis. So if I go ahead and select the part, you can see how we can display all the curvatures. You can see the color bar on the left side showing the curvature areas within the colors. And you can also show the concave only or the convex only as well. So it changes the color codes in regards to the setting that you show. So I say show all. You can show your optimal distribution range as well. You can turn off flat faces as well. So you can actually display flat faces as their own unique color. You can change when you do optimal distribution. It's going to optimally distribute this all as one entity. So when I say custom, now these values are editable and I can type in the values. You can see how it changes the colors instantly for the curvature in your model. So as you can see how the colors are going to change automatically. So if I wanted to, I can pick on these areas, create labels, and when I confirm, I can actually retain these labels within my dialog. So with this, I can also show the label in the minimum radius. So it automatically imprints in the minimum radius area of this part in regards to the curvature. So you can see how the arrow actually points at the minimum area, and you can see what your minimum radius is going to be overall. So now we're going to go into the altitude manager. So if we go select this option, and then pick our part, you can see how the altitude is going to be displayed. So from 0 to whatever the maximum altitude is. You can have it automatically display the labels for the altitude. You can control your label ranges. So you can draw, imprint, and color these labels onto your part automatically. If I go to show labels, I could actually also create labels as well. So I select draw, it's actually going to create wireframe lines around it. If I select imprint, it actually imprints those edges on there, and then imprint and color automatically does the color coding for you. So we're going to talk about the compare command. This command has been redeveloped as well to create a cleaner user interface between the two parts to make ease of use. So the functionality to show apply analysis only on one solid and both solids has also been added as well. Within query distance, the function has been improved with some new added options and graphic datums. It is now possible to define the direction along to which the calculated distance is. The distance calculation between two planes and two parallel flats, or between 2 points and 2 flat faces, has also been added. In the query command within query distance, this is also applied to the query distance point to point, point to element, point to face, and face to face. So here's just a quick video showing these commands. So we're going to talk about the compare command. So we have 2 solids here, and if I go to analysis compare, you'll see that the dialog has been vastly improved upon. So we can actually select both solids, and you can see how immediately it goes to just the changes between the 2 solids. So you can display common areas by checking the box, apply a unique color to the common areas. We can show only the difference between the first body and only the difference between the second body. If we go to results apply on, you can say first body only. You can say second body only as well. So if I select mark edges as relevant, you can actually mark the relevant edges where there's differences between the models. So when I go ahead and confirm, you can see only on the first body that comparison. So now we'll go into query distance and just show some of the new functionality within this. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this edge and this face, and you can actually see how it creates a new graphic datum or a new datum area that displays the distances between those faces. So you can see the minimum distance, you can see maximum distance, and minimum distance to a planar face, and distance along a direction. This also displays the labels as well, so if I say keep results, it keeps the results there too. So now we're going to go to this example. We're going to kind of show some of the additional functionality within this as well. So if we go to query distance, we're going to go ahead and select, let's say, the center of this circle to the center of the other circle. So right now, the minimum distance between those circles is displayed here. You can see how the maximum distance is, and you can say distance along direction as well. So you can see where the dialog actually displays. So you can keep results, you can keep different colors for whatever distances that you want, and you can actually manipulate the chain. So I can select different chain dispositions as well. So you can add witness lines instead of actually the chain, and you can actually display the distance of those lines in the X, Y, Z from here. So going on to our last example, we're actually going to go this time from face to face. And this shows the same type of planes that we see in the initial example. You can see what the minimum distance is between those faces. You could change some of your different settings around. So minimum distance is actually going to draw a line. Maximum distance is going to draw a line. Minimum distance between parallels is going to draw this line. So you can keep the results, you can keep the label in there, and it displays and retains all those lines. Dynamic tooltip within Dynamic Query. The calculation of the geometric properties like volume is performed within a separate thread. So the relevant information like coordinates, attributes are shown immediately, which is the second thread, which is calculated within geometric properties. So this is now displayed within the Dynamic Query options. Within query thickness, you now can display both inches and millimeters, so you can flip back and forth between the two. Some new enhancements to Dynamic Section include the ability to define a point of a section that is retained when changing the direction. It is now possible to recall the dynamic section during a pick phase of any commands. And there's a new rotation angle option to insert the angle value within the rotation mode. There's a new scaled hatch option. This mode allows you to compute the approximate size of the hatch within the section body. And within Motion Study, you now have the ability to define a roto-translation movement. There's also the ability to merge work files that contain defined motion study and have all the defined movements update to a new position after being merged. So here's some of the new functionality within Dynamic Section. So if I go into, let's say, Change Attributes, I can actually activate that dynamic section while inside the Change Attributes. So this is just simply hitting the X, Y, Z buttons, and I'm within Change Attributes. Previously, I would actually have to select the command, or previously I'd have to be out of the command to be able to use this. So right now, I press X, Y, Z, I'm actually inside the dialog box command, and it actually applies the dynamic section. So you can see, if I highlight all my different solids, you can see how they're still selectable within the dynamic section too. So now we're going to talk about the dynamic section rotation angle options. So if I select translational right now, I select a defining point for where it's actually going to be rotating from. I'm still in translation right now, but if I select X, Y, Z, I still have the ability to do my move sections and the standard functionality, but I could also do a rotation too. And you can see how I actually have rotation angle, and I could type in an angle in here, and on the fly it instantly changes that angle to whatever I want. 90 degrees, 45 degrees, etc. And we can also change the scaling for the hatch lines. Right now it's set to a scaled hatch or scaled hatch with default color. So the hatch lines scale to the part that they're actually being hatched from. So you can see how just a standard hatch, the lines are the same distance. When I do a scaled hatch, anything that's smaller, like these horn pins, are actually displayed with a smaller hatch line. So very nice to be able to see any kind of smaller features and know what size those features actually are. So here's just an example for motion study. This is doing a roto translation when it comes to doing the motion study. So right now, if I do, like, let's say a file merge, and I merge in a second file that has motion study defined within it, I just place it somewhere else. I switch to that active plane as well, and then I merge a third one. This is basically just the same file we're merging in, but different planes completely. So going back to motion study, if I hit play, and I go to select any of the other movements, for example, it will automatically recognize the plane, and it'll do the roto translation in that specific plane after merge. So it's merging in the motion study data within another file. So I'll go ahead and merge another one here as well. And this is also on a completely different plane. So when I go back to motion study, I just choose that study within my motion study area. And if I hit play, you'll see how it's going to also do that rotation as well. And it retains that setting when merging in a file. So some of the new functionality within Bounding Box is basically combining everything into one tab. So the results data has been moved into one tab. It is now also possible to apply a cavity on the calculation of the solid bounding box and create a work plane in relevance to the bounding box as well. So you can basically choose any of the points that are displayed to create a work plane from bounding box. Within solid interference, you now have the ability to apply a color and imprint edges marking them as relevant for any contacts and intersection areas. There's a new option called hide solids that do not have contact with any parts or intersections with one another. Inside a surface analyzer, you have more consistent information that is portrayed within the surface type and surface features. There's a new dynamic field that has been added to show diameter values for holes. And here's this quick video showing the bounding box real quick. So let's just select our part, and you can see how we have our collapsible windows. You can actually create work planes, and it will automatically show points in relevance to the work plane areas. So you could actually choose the point by a drop down here. So you could do at maximum Z, automatically creating a work plane at maximum Z. You could do a standard at minimum Z and just pick a point. Pick a position for where you want that to be displayed. So if I go to all, it shows all of my points. If you go to at maximum Z, it shows all maximum Z points. You can also say ignore offsets or activate that work plane after it's already created. So within this offset area, you can actually apply an offset to. And these work plane relevants automatically do this. If I say ignore the offset, it actually ignores that offset and goes back to the original position. So if I select create work plane, it'll actually create a work plane where I can give that work plane a name right from the bounding box. So it saves time. If I ever have to make a work plane, I don't have to apply points. It just applies that work plane where I want it to be applied to. So now we'll talk about the solid interference command. So selecting all these additional areas, if I go to select the solid interference box, you can see all the contact faces, all the collision faces, green and red. I can show interference zones, and I can only show interference zones if I wanted to. I can say hide non-intersecting faces, so it unchecks any solids that are not intersecting as well, so I can just specify what I want to see and what I don't. I can do only intersections and do the same type of hiding. I can display all, and I can apply this information as well. So now we're going to see what's new within the Electrode module. So within the Electrode command, the command has been redeveloped for ease of use and better functionality. So there are a few new options within this. One of them is total height. So this field allows you to show what the total height is for the electrode tip. So you can also create a by solid box for the electrode, which creates a solid box for the electrode, basically using bounding box on the selected faces. The cavity operation allows you to cavity this workpiece without the need of actually using the cavity command to do this. This allows you to create the shape of the erosion area for the electrode to be created. And some angular information is available on the rotation, which is calculated from the bounding box as well. So here's just a quick video just showing you how the new Electrode command works. So we've got this little spot right here for where we're going to create an electrode. So if I go to Electrode, and I select the faces of where I want the electrode burn to be based off of, I choose the direction and the burn piece, it creates a solid box off of it automatically. So right now, we're doing it by solid. If I select by vertical, or I select by linear, it does not work. But by box, in this specific situation, allows you to create that area. I could do a translation of this, so I can preview what it looks like. So it's basically like a slider to show how this part is actually going to slide in and create the electrode burn. So right now, I can see all the yellow faces are marked as my contact faces. So you can see how it creates that electrode specifically off of this area. And I can adjust the height of this to actually add some additional height. So if I go ahead and confirm this, it'll create that electrode. So let's look at an additional spot right here. So I'll select the faces for this one right here. Pick the direction, pick the collision piece. And this time, I can actually use a vertical or a linear as well. I can do angular information too. So I'm going to adjust the height of this real quick. I can adjust the depth of this. What it's going to do is it'll automatically create a cavity for me instantly. And then I could do my transformation as well. So you can see how it automatically creates a cavity for me of that specific electrode when we're doing our burning. So I can confirm that, and that's another electrode that's been created. So if I want to isolate that electrode, you can see there's the actual electrode itself. I can still model it up, I can still do some cleanup work off of this as well, but that's the basic shape of the electrode. So like right now, let's do some cleanup work. I'm just using edit face to do so, and I can edit that face. So I can adjust the stock to move it up, and I just have my burn position area cleaning up the model just a little bit. I can also use what is called replace face with surface. I can select these faces, and I can just say, okay, from here, I want the offset of that to be of a certain position. So I can set the offset value for that, and it'll actually make that actually a flat area. So I'm doing an offset from the top. I'm making a flat area for my electrode. And basically this would be the finished electrode with the stock applied and what needs to be burned. So the electrode makes it a lot easier to actually create an electrode for burn position. So within electrode stock, there is an option to apply colors to the contact faces and mark the edges as relevant where the erosion data is selected. Within the electrode axis management, there are some options to swap X and Y to easily have the combination of an X and Y direction. It is also possible to load a holder and automatically place the holder as the electrode origin by pressing the Enter key. There is also an option to say load holder from Electrode Manager. When you're loading a holder, there is a new option to be able to create the origin as holder reference for the origin position. So for those of you that create a holder with the origin set to the feet of the holder, this will add that option. In the electrode position, in the EDM settings, to define the number of decimal place values, you would have to put in a 0 integer for the position for it to round to the filling numbers. The option to define trailing places in order to have the 3 values for X, Y, Z would be the same number of places. So within here, we're going to show how the electrode stock enhancements have worked. So we're going to select 2 solids, we're going to select the collision piece, and it applies that electrode stock to that. So you can see how you can actually put in whatever distance that you want. You can create a heel off this full holder and increase the height for that heel as well. So as a stock, it adds a heel to that as well. So there's a simple checkbox within the origins to be able to swap X and Y. So you can do the swapping from the default axis option here, or just apply a checkbox which automatically does that as well. So you can see how the work plane swaps just by a simple checkbox. So you can swap the X and Y, and it makes it easier to do so. So if we go ahead and confirm this one, apply the work plane, it applies that work plane here. So now we're going to go into holders from stock. So I'm going to go ahead and select my electrode, select my part. I'm going to go ahead and place that area right here, change the height of the stock itself, set that as transparent. Go ahead and select any options here so you can see how we'll set it to bottom right now. Stock bottom face, and top. So you see how you have your different settings in there. Now, if I go to holders from library, I can actually insert in a holder. This only works with the holders that are automatically in the software. So unfortunately, at the present time, any custom holders that are made, this option will not be applied. So if I use this drop down, I can select holder reference. It automatically puts that holder at the feet of the actual electrode holder itself. So if I go ahead and apply, I don't have to manually apply that position. So I'll go into some of the new features within the Electrode Manager. Inside the report field, there is a total length, including the holder for outputting this information. The status of the options for the context menu is retained within the current Visi session. You also have the ability to do a four-sided mirror when you're using the Create Mirrored Copies option within Electrode Manager. The confirmation of the stock is no longer present in naming the mirrored area, as the prefix would show up as a star and is shown within the two mirrored copied areas. So now we'll go into the plot view modules. We'll start with page properties. Load default parameters has been added to the page properties at the top of the screen. This allows you to load specific parameters within the page properties dialog. Options name and ordering has been aligned with the ones in the plot view parameters command as well. And you have the ability to add in a section to match the tab name to the plot view parameters and make it more evident to the options reference. Within Page Manager, there have been several enhancements that have been added. You have a drag and drop functionality which allows you to move pages in the tree. it is possible to define a custom sorting in the tree. You have the ability to now select multiple pages. There is a possibility to order the tree to use different criteria, such as name descending, by index ascending, etc. It is now possible to insert pages or more between existing ones. The dialog box deletes multiple pages within the same order as the format of the tree. In the cases of multiple selection, the pages for the contextual menu, when you right-click, contain only the items suitable for a multiple function. There is a possibility to define the page name formats also when creating the automatic plot view for Electrode projects. You have the ability to add groups within the tree, so pages can be dragged into a group to basically create some more alignment. And you can add and remove layers, groups, and functions within the contextual menu of the Plot View Manager. There is a new option within the part page information to put contextual menu plot view tree items in there. So here's just a quick video example just showing initially the drag and drop functionality. So right now, if I want to, I could take this page right here. You can see the page names, you can see the information in there. I can actually drag and drop stuff from one area to another and change the ordering of it. So I could simply drag and drop one. I could drag and drop multiples as well. So I could drag and drop these. So if I get a file from another customer and there's less ordering, I can drag them. If I go to Plot View and the Plot View options, I have the ability to change the default page ordering. I can change the default page names within the ordering as well. So I can add and remove any page names as I need to. I can add an empty page between pages. So just like with the layer manager, with the insert empty layer before, I can add an empty page in between. And it automatically labels that empty page within the ordering functions. I could add empty pages, and I could put a number of empty pages in between as well. So like, let's say 5. I could do multiple pages with the same functionality too, automatically numbering the next page on down. I could do the page name formats, and I can actually customize the page names right there on the fly. So this customizes every single page name that's listed here. So you can see it automatically updates all the pages. I have a bunch of different ordering options, ordering by name, paper size, paper index, and so on. So it sorts it and orders it by whatever I select. And again, when I select delete, you can see how it updates that relevant data as well. When it comes to grouping pages together, I could create a group within the Plot View Page Manager. I can give that group a name to whatever I want. And I could select multiple different pages and drag and drop them into that group. So I could have different groups for this as well. So when I do my selection, I could pick multiple different pages and just simply drag and drop right into that group. And now it subdivides everything up into a group where I have folders, and I can start organizing my data, much like how a family would work within Assembly Manager or a layer group would work within Layer Manager. So you can see how you can drag and drop different things into different groups and sort out the pages that you want. I could drag and drop pages between one page and another page within that group as well, and expand and collapse that group. And it basically cleans up and organizes my page manager data so it's easier to find what I'm looking for. If I want to insert page information, I can go to Plot View Page Information, and I can select a 3D part and get that information right off of that 3D part. So I can see exactly actually what page that 3D part is associated to for the assembly and the individual block. And I can select the existing part as well. Within Plot View settings, there have been some refinements to the position and display of the Plot View options in order to create a compact dialog list and faster identification of options. Some of the common options for view and section have been grouped together in the same frame. Some of the file section options and print to file options are in their own specific tab. The palette color is now available to define the colors of cosmetic axes. And the multi-view options have been separated out. For example, each group has its own area. For example, view 1, view 2. Within the view and section creation, the shading options have been separated out as shaded view and shaded section. Scaling is now available within the view tab itself, so you don't have to actually set the scale after the view has already been created. Draw center line has been moved to the options tab from creation view. And there is a list of standard scales in the plot view manager as well as in plot view settings. When creating an isometric view, it is now possible to pick the corner of the view direction and toggle the spacebar. So now we're going to go into the multi-view options. Within multi-view and the electrode options in the configuration, it has now been aligned so the corresponding options match up with what's in the plot view manager. For example, ordering, position, and name. An option has been added to assign electrode names to the page names, which is now active by default. These views are constrained to one another and will retain the alignment in the case of translation. The alignment constraints can be used for the contextual menu within the page trees. Within Save and Print, in the General tab, the trees are now displayed as the same thing as what is in the General tab. Within the Print tab, it is now possible to define change paper sizes rather than have to go back to the General tab, saving you time. So we're going to some of the new areas within the detail view creation. There's been automatic increment name changes that have been done. For example, you could set this to ABC, 1, 2, 3, A1, A2, A3, and a number before the letter as well. Within Mail Thread, as mentioned before, there's been a complete management and cosmic overhaul with this for the annotation. The single element dimension is working on Mail Thread, so it shows the diameter value. The text leader is working with Mail Thread, so it shows the feature value callouts. Both are involved with the single element and text leader within model view and plot view. And Mail Thread is shown within commands such as Surface Analyzer, Dynamic Tip, Query, and the 3D Note. Within your callout options, the values in fraction have been corrected or correctly displayed in the callout text for text leader, 3D boring chart, and the extended dimension commands. Cross axis, when you are creating a cross within a command, it is now possible to create the associative to the selection of the edges within model view and or plot view, so it's easier to update after the modifications of the part. There is a new option to skip axes or circles for the computation within the cross axis. So we're going to talk about a really big enhancement to the plot view area. It's called Body ID Reassociation. So basically, when it comes to a view that's linked to a model view, it will allow you to relink that view. These views highlight in purple. So when you are actually highlighting the view, it will highlight in purple if it's a disassociated view. You have a verify link parts, which allows you to verify the link part so it goes back to the model view. It allows you to reselect parts to associate to that plot view area. And you can also fix link parts as well, which basically does the same thing. So this is a big enhancement if you do a design change that for some reason disassociates the view from plot view. This is big within the plot view area. So here's just a quick video just kind of showing that. So I've got a few different views in here. Let's say if there's a design change, or if, like, let's say a view got dissolved for any reason, you can actually relink or reassociate them. So right now these are currently linked. So you can see how they're highlighting on the solid model part as well. So let's just say there's a design change. We dissolve a body. So we're going to basically strip away the attributes of these items. So then we'll go, of course, reunite them back together. We'll make them back into a solid. So we're using solid surfaces here in this instance. So it creates two solid bodies off of this. And then looking at our 2D view, you can see how all the views that are disassociated become pink. So if I right click on the actual page itself and select update, it does update to the relevant views. However, I could go into the individual views as well, and I can verify the link part. So it allows me to select the link part within these areas. So I select the link part. Do you want to associate those? Yes. And then we select the secondary part and pick those ones as well. So it basically is going to relink or resynchronize those up to a 3D part if there's a design change that involves disassociating to a plot view page. Update and update selected drawing. Commands from Plot View Manager have been enhanced. So in the case that there's a view that has been lost with a link, in cases of the system information being lost, you now have the procedure that allows you to relink these parts with a solid. This is similar to the fixed link part as mentioned before. With associative dimensions, automatic dimensions are now created within multi-view are now associated. Annotation that is created from a relative or absolute origin is now fully associative as well, meaning if you're creating a point from the part to the origin, it is a fully associative and will automatically update type of dimension. Within your default printers, the default printer inside the Print tab is no longer allowed to be switched from Model View and Plot View. The File Print default printer will actually be the default printer that's going to print to. Views created from a current work plane. You will now get a warning message when you're trying to create a view from a work plane that has not been saved. The work plane warning is displayed when you're trying to delete a work plane that has views that are created within it. And the option has changed for the view properties, which would be grayed out when referencing a work plane that is not saved. So here's the error message that you'd be receiving. Within masks, it is now possible to define more than 15 groups, up to 99 now. So this would be useful for the EDM projects with many electrodes. Now we're going to go into what's new within the standard elements area. So within the standard elements, there's been some component updates. There have been several libraries that have been updated. For example, progressive. This component library has actually been updated, so now it is automatically in the software without a separate installer. You also have the self-lube wear plates that have been now updated, so these are also included in the software without a separate installer. Other supplier libraries that have been updated are as followed as well. So you've got, just to highlight a few of them, the DME, Hasco, Wiesberger, Misumi, and so on. Within the builder updates, there's been a lot of builder updates that have been added within this library as well. So within builders, you can actually create the component without actually selecting a plate. There will be corrected variables within the DEF library for punch conversions as well. And there have been some improvements with the dowel pin insertion, which allows you to select these and add a specific plot view attribute notifying you that these are dowel pins. And just some general param and G notes. There have been some speed improvements with multi-insertion of components, and there have been a few things that have been improved, such as custom component libraries. So reviewing some of the sequences of saving during the insertion of a standard element, as well as putting stuff into custom folders for user section messaging on a network as well. Now we're going to review what is new within the mold module. So with part definition and filling validations, there have been some recent updates as well. So the flow light module has actually been removed and is now part of the filling validation and part definition areas. What does this mean? Inside part definition, you now have options to change your mesh settings and edit the calculation of the thickness values. The following options have been added to the filling validations under the current variables, such as temperature, pressure, shear stress, and the cooling time. So the highlighted potential formation of weld lines, air traps, and the display of the diagrams have been added to filling validations as well. And select the drawing chart icon has been automatically added to display over the model of the diagram as well. The calculation and pressure limits for the pressure to end of filling is now available, and the mold data display within the filling validations. So here's just a quick video showing that. So you can see in flow, the flow light is gone. So now it is part of part definition as well as the filling validations area. So if I select part definition here, I go ahead and select my part. So you'll see when we actually load the part in here that it's actually going to display the mesh properties. So we go to select material real quick. Choose whatever material that we're going to choose from. So we're talking about thousands of materials in here. And you can see here's that mesh variable right here. So you can change your mesh properties, generate the mesh basically from there, and change your mesh properties. So this was available previously when you use flow light. Now it is in the part definition. So once this is completed, you will now be taken right to the filling validations module as well. So we can assign thicknesses in here. You can basically change your different properties for this as well. So once confirmed, go into filling validations, select that mesh. Basically from here, just like what we always did, you go ahead and select the injection part. You can use different materials in here, and you can also add in your own custom materials as well. There's a lot of information that you would need to know, but you can add in your own materials into there. You can see how we have our injection time, melt temperature, your pressure at infilling, pressure limits, and so on. We can pick injection points, and basically that's going to select an injection point and run the calculation. So as soon as that's complete, you can see all the additional options. Previous to the filling validations, you just had isochrones, which is used to simulate the filling of the plastic, but now you have these additional options that were previously available inside of the flow light options. So you can change your different properties around. You can see different shear stress. You can display weld lines and air traps. Those were only available previously inside of flow light, now in filling validations. So we're going to talk about some of the new enhancements to body to mold. This feature has been updated to add the transform from workplane into the software. Now we're going to talk about the body to mold command. This feature has added the transform the workplane option within the mold position part to save time. Another option that has been added is the ability to select multiple parts to reset the scale to when using the reset scale on part. Within tool design, there have been some updates to the tool design library such as DME, Museberger, Hasco within the tool design area. These updates have been updated for relative plates as well as standard element dimensions. So here's just a quick video showing the body to mold module. So if I select the part, select this component right here, I'll use a defined work plane, selecting the element, just like so. I have the ability with that arrow to be able to transform that work plane if I wanted to. So you can see how I have this arrow. I can drag and drop with the Z distance. I can drag and drop with an X distance as well to change the height of that. So it's like using transform work plane. So you can see how you can actually adjust it in all directions. So if I want to change the application point for my work plane, I can do that with what would be the transform work plane. And you can see how automatically in mold position it shifts that as well. So continuing on, if we say reset mold part, we're just going to create this part real quick here. Adding this shrink value, adding what we need. If I say browse mold parts, you can see how there's 3 parts, including a couple of clips. Basically what I can do in this version now is when I go to reset scale on part, I can pick all of those parts right now. So I don't have to actually pick each individual part, reset the scale of the part, possibly run the risk of the scale actually being in the wrong position. It will just do them all at one time, and everything updates from the assembly manager to the browse mold part as well. Within injector pin labeling, there have been several enhancements that have been added to better define and edit labels when it comes to using the injector pin labeling. Some of these enhancements include being able to select and unselect all entities in single selection on 3D. You have the ability to add fields that immediately show if there is any label checking that is required. You can set shift angles for the labels. You have the ability to do a multi-edit of labels, so if you have multiple different labels that need to be checked, you can do the edit on more than one at the same time. It is possible to switch the diameter and length to a fraction or a decimal place value, and it is possible to transform the ejectors and have the ejector pin labeling update automatically. So here's just a quick video that kind of shows the ejector pin labeling. So inside here, I'm going to go ahead and select this list of ejector pins. You can see how I have a list here. I can do a select all. I have a button right here, and you can select all of the entities at the same time. So basically what this does is it places the labels in there. So when we do place the labels in there, you can see how we have an identity area where I can select all of the problem areas that say please check multiple labels. So if I go into the ejector pin labeling here, I go to select all, I go to update, and I go to apply the labels. If I say please check, I can go to edit, and I can select all of them and actually do a shift angle for every single one of them. So it updates all of the entities that were previously updated. I could change all the properties for every single entity at one time, and you can see how they all shift at one time. If I go to edit again, I could do a negative value as well, and you can see how the plate shift value updates for every single one of them. So I could sort by ascending, descending, and this is sorting by that results field, editing all of the results at once, basically selecting all of them. I can go to edit, and I can change the angle for all three of those at the same time. So you can see how now the status automatically updates as they are okay, meaning the label isn't going to overlap with a lock or the ejector pin or another ejector pin. So in this example, if I go ahead and, let's say, plot a table out, I can edit the diameter values for that table, and I can edit these lists. You can see how we change it from a fractional value, delete the table, re-add the table, and you can see how that decimal place value is now displayed as a decimal rather than a fraction. So you can edit those at one time. They do update in the CSV file automatically, and it basically edits all of the ejector pin labeling at once. So now we're going to talk about the wire points options. This feature has been improved with several enhancements, such as better defining the points and editing detected wire points. Some of the enhancements include the following. You have the possibility to remove wire points using an easy window selection. You have a save part as function to allow you to save the wire points as linked. You have a save part as option for Assembly Manager to save linked wire points. You have a part revision function within the Assembly Manager to allow you to save the wire points as linked items. You have an automatic view that can create selected plates with relative linked elements. You can default the parameters that have been customized. And this function is also available in the Progress module. So we're going to go into some of the new features within Visi Flow. So we'll start off with the temperature and pressure valve exports. So there's a new option called Export to Macro, or MARC for short. Basically, this option allows you to create a CSV file that is easily readable by any other programs to be able to determine the temperature and pressure of the vertex or vertices for a mesh each time for each time step. Within the material databases, there have been several materials added. So there are 7,000 plus materials added to the current database. This is always being improved for accuracy, reliability of the calculations. So continuing on with the thermal modules, in addition to a number of elements and runner changes for both hot and cold runners, the number of cooling channels can now be displayed in the project information to avoid exceeding the maximum number of elements. The calculation of matrices has also been improved by reorganizing the writing of various file generations by the analysis. So now we're going to go into what's new within the Progress side of the software. So we'll start with part unfolding. All of the part unfolding options now work with solid and surface data. The user can now study a model that has been processed within part definition, and the models can be extracted by a skin and defined with the correct properties. This option allows you the same solution in both conditions, solid and surface, to improve the workflow and guiding to the new customer to identify the best approach to achieve the results. Within part definition step unfolding, this part has been enhanced to define the analysis of etching recognition. This enhancement guarantees the possibility to manage these kinds of features. The unfold of these types of features have been improved to achieve better results, especially when the feature is a single or multi-linear bend. So I'll go into part unfolding. We'll select part definition, and you can see how we have our different part studies in here. So if we do a step unfolding, you can see how it starts to do the unfold steps from there. We pick these two areas. You can see how it automatically adds an additional step too. So then we can actually go to this same part right here, and we can do an extract skin. And when we do a part unfolding or step unfolding, it basically is going to do the same thing. We just change our environments to edges, and it automatically does the same exact steps. Basically, instead of picking faces, we pick edges of the surface to achieve those same steps. And now when we go to the part flange unfolding, again, you could pick either a face or an edge and basically preview what that unfold option is going to do. You can do a tangent, you can do an extrusion, and now doing the same thing this time on the edged area, it basically achieves the same thing. So it doesn't matter whether you're working with a solid or a surface, you're still going to achieve a good unfold. And we'll talk about the part blank unfolding. Once again, this is a surface here. You can see how we have the same unfolding steps. You have the expand and collapsible frames with these commands as well, but you can see how the blank preview looks. And if I go ahead and select everything, I can map edges. I can do whatever I need to do with it. So now I'll work with a little bit more of a complex area. We're going to do part flange unfolding, basically selecting all of these faces. It automatically picks the faces, automatically picks the edges. So if I hit preview on the extrusion, you can see how it does the unfold for everything automatically. Now if I pick faces, I can select these faces here as well. I may have accidentally selected too many faces, so I can go and deselect them. But I can basically add another step and do the part unfolding for that, or leave it in the same step if I choose to. We're going to talk about what's new with the part unfolding. So there has been improved mesh quality calculation when it comes to the FTI and D&E mesh type of solutions. This is to help improve the quality of results. The option is available within the mesh options pull down, so you can quickly change between these two mesh types, FTI and D&E. The binder surface has been improved, so it allows you to achieve better results, and it also improves the surface quality, increasing the success rate when it comes to unfolding complex bends. The system allows for the unfolding of reference faces for planes and or nonlinear bends. With the improvement of the command, if you open up, or it opens up a greater flexibility to get more success on unfolding different parts. You can now extract skins off of a flange, and you can switch back and forth between the faces and edges environment to be able to achieve a nonlinear bend. In the same way, you can take and change the approach of how you're going to select the part with the same algorithm and technology. There's a new morphing faces option that you can select as well. So within that morphing option, you can now do a combination of binder and mesh type surfacing. You can select preserved and select the original shapes. So if you have shapes on the other side of the flange, you can actually preserve them now. That is huge when it comes to unfolding parts. So the system can unfold multi-steps, whereas the designer can choose different areas for it to stop unfolding. So here's just a video example that kind of reviews that. So if we go to part flange unfolding, we go ahead and select the face here. You can actually unfold that data right from that face. So this is going to unfold it and create a blank for us. We could choose the other side and either unfold it in the same step or add an additional step to this as well. You can also change the start and end angles to this bend as well. So when we say add another step, it's actually unfolding it in a different step, aka a different station. So for this part, we're going to go ahead and extract a skin off of this. And we're just going to show the environment of being able to select a face or an edge to be able to unfold from using the flange unfolding. So when we go into progress, we go to part flange unfolding. We'll start by selecting the faces environment. So what this is going to do, when we just select the faces and hit preview, it's going to unfold everything, including extra bends on the other side of that flange. So let's say in this step, we actually want to maintain that blend. We select this constraining face option. You select the face itself, and what it's going to do is it's actually going to preserve that face, so when we do the unfold, that face actually maintains that preservation. We can do the same thing when it comes to selecting edges as well. So you pick all the edges that you're going to unfold to, and it's also going to, at the same time, because that edge was not selected, it preserves it as well. So if I go ahead and confirm it, you can see those steps that are now applied. So let's look at this part. We're going to go to Part Flange Unfold, and we got some more faces that we're going to preserve. So we select this area, we pick the faces that we want to preserve here. There's going to be multiples in this case. We change the view to select exactly which faces we want to preserve for this specific part. And basically from there, when we hit Preview, it's going to preserve those faces so they do not bend when we fold the main flange. So for example, it flattens everything out except for the faces that we specified. So now we're going to get into what's new with the strip study. There is a new function that involves the blanking part called automatic repairing, which eliminates some of the limitations that could happen when it comes to borders within a blank part, which are not well defined. In this version, we have the ability to do a defined punch height as well. In previous versions, the height was internally set, and the user could modify it using CAD commands. This new selection allows the user to edit and better manage the height and the height of the punch and the punch penetration values right through strip study. With the flange on curve, there has been some enhancements to eliminate several limitations by improving the capability of the unfolding functionality. The solution can be used to unfold electrical pins, small components by defining the rotational axis and the unfolding direction. So now you can see how we have different settings in here. We have the punch penetration height, and you can see how the height is defaultly set, but then we can actually type in whatever height that we want, make it bigger, make it smaller, and you can change the penetration height as well to adjust the actual punch and the penetration height as well. So you can see here's the penetration height for the punch. You can adjust that and then adjust to make the punch go deeper. Just mark that up with the dimension as well, so you can see the actual heights that are being marked. So we're going to go into the flange on curve option. So we'll select this electrical panel here, pick the rotation center, pick the application point where we want this to actually unfold from, which will be the Y, and then we're going to go ahead and hit preview and let it start unfolding that step. So basically that's going to show us and allow us to create a flattened part. Here's just another example of it with a little bit more complexity. So we'll select flange on a curve, we'll go ahead and pick this sheet body, we'll pick the center and choose the direction where we're going to actually rotate this one around. And you can see how it starts to unfold that area with the flange on a curve. So you can see how it doesn't actually unfold every single little thing, but it starts to unfold that electrical pin or that electrical component. We can add a new station and have it be fully flat from there and start creating our strip from that. So we're going to talk about some of the new enhancements with the punches. So there is a new option to be able to select a different plate for pilots. The user can define these set defaults for the start plate for all pilots in the configuration file, or they can be edited one by one in the parameters. This could be a new option that is very useful in saving time in the tool design. So we're going to talk about another new feature. This is called Erosion Block. This is a brand new feature which automates a manual process that each user would need to perform during and after a punching process definition. The solids will automatically be instanced from the original ones. In this way, the modification can be done on the punches during the tool design, which will automatically be notified for the punch nesting for preparing it for wire cutting. So here's just a quick video going over the punch enhancements. So if I select the extension to the punch plate, I could choose a different default plate for where it's going to extend to, and it'll automatically update all of the relevant punches in regards to that plate. So when I say rebuild, it'll automatically update. So the same thing is true for the pilots here. So as you can see, we can select the pilots inside the configuration. We can actually manually change specific pilots to choose the extension to a specific plate. So you can update the plates automatically going back and forth. So as you can see, here's our standard plate. So you can actually have it update to be able to create clearance holes, update the component, and so on. So now we're going to talk about the new erosion block command. So what erosion block does is when I select my punches, basically from here, I can actually set up a erosion block, basically saving the manual process of having to create the block, having to create the punches. So what this does is it creates a block along, or to the side. You can change the border gap, the part gaps, and basically you can create your block for not just the punches, but also for the components themselves. If you're trying to actually make the block or make the cavity for the punches. So if I go to wire point on plate or wire point for punches, basically what this allows me to do is it allows me to select the punches, and it will create the wire points to be able to make those punches. So this actually saves you quite a bit of time because the punches are already set up and they're already set to the extrusion distance or the depth that they need to be. So this is going to save a ton of time when it comes to your punches and being able to actually create them to be able to wire cut. The export to Stampak Express has been changed as well. So this feature has been improved, allowing the user better defaults for parameters for the mesh creation generating a good mesh quality ready for Stampak Express analysis. Other improvements include the possibility to select the part analysis and calculating for small blend radiuses. It calculates using the curvature calculation command, but the value can be easily edited by the user. More layers can be selected on each operation, and the system now allows you to export surfaces and wireframe using different formats such as STL and IGES. The function is also, there's a new function to correctly manage and export the information about the current work plane as well. So we're going to go into Visi Reverse. What's new with Visi Reverse? So within point filtering, this option has been enhanced to show the limits set as a cylinder display in the graphic area. So you have a better ability to control the operation. Within mesh editing, there have been several improvements as well. So you now have the ability to change the mesh color and the mesh face, or in the face color, and it is now possible to select triangles as a reference to choose the new color or face of the triangles. The system automatically creates a single face when several triangles or faces have been set by the same color. And within Merge Mesh, there is a new option to be able to add and retain existing mesh colors. Within One-Click Surface, the system calculates a wrapped grid with consideration of the shape of the mesh. This solution is available for calculating the grid guided by a feature line detected on the mesh. This makes it possible to have a grid that faithfully reflects the shape of the part and thus recreates the surface model with fewer faces and saves time during the calculation process. Within Replace Face with Plane or Radius, the Replace Face solution helps the user in the reverse process, especially with cases of geometric parts. So the new command allows you the ability to select a face or a solid to adapt to the selected parts of the mesh. The mesh can be selected as a single mesh with seed points or by selecting triangles. The system is able to modify the solids according to the position of the mesh by extending or reducing the solid to the mesh. So this way the mesh can be used as a means of extending a solid to a larger mesh. Within Compare, the color bar has been better enhanced to be able to select the number of color ranges that have been modified. This new option allows you to define a tolerance value comparing with the nominal CAD extract from the mesh or cloud out of the tolerance. This is useful for analyzing the scan cloud parts or mesh compared with the nominal parts. The system creates the cloud or mesh where the user can see the areas out of the set tolerance. And thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. I'm going to open up the mic to question and answer. Again, appreciate everyone's time and hope you enjoyed the 2023 release update.